In 1785, there were Indians at the mission who had been baptized, who were very much implicated in the daily organization of the mission. One of those was Nicolas Jose, who had been the first alcalde, the first sort of elected official who worked alongside the missionaries to run the mission. We know that before the rebellion, he was one of the Indians who was punished for trying to hold native ceremonies, dances, and songs at the mission. He, along with other Indians at the mission, call upon village leaders surrounding the mission. And one of the people who Nicolas Jose calls upon was a Gabrielino woman, Toypurina.
I was able to name my granddaughter after her, Toypurina. We call her Toy. And we know that she was a medicine woman, and her name describes it. It's Toypur, the medicine woman.
I think it was pretty widespread amongst the indigenous people that this plan was going to take place. First night of the full moon, at midnight, they were going to sneak into the mission, and they were going to first start by killing the priests, and hopefully this would have started some sort of movement in the area where other indigenous people would join in numbers and enforce against the Spaniards and drive them out. Jose Maria Pico was a guard at the mission. I imagine these people would never have expected this man, Jose Maria Pico, to understand their language. Jose Maria Pico is the one who uncovers the plot. And so they removed the priests and they put soldiers in priests' robes. And then on the night of the full moon, they came and they were able to apprehend the indigenous people.
They arrested those who they thought were involved, and they put them on trial. And the trial record exists today. In the 1950s, a historian, Thomas Workman Temple, looked at the transcript, and that was the inspiration for an article that he wrote. He essentially fictionalized the account and recast it, placing Toypurina at the center of this rebellion, when in fact Nicolas Jose had probably been the prime instigator. The problem is he took great liberties with the past and invented a certain Toypurina figure who in reality didn't exist. The Spaniards understood her as spreading false information. And Temple takes that notion of her being deceitful or deceptive and transforms it into something else. That somehow she's working in league with the devil, is a witch casting spells, and yes, it's in some ways a much more exciting and dramatic story, but it doesn't do justice to who she was as a person. Toypurina was not a witch. She was influential in her community. She didn't cast spells. She tried to rally her family and her friends against the mission.
People need heroes. Throughout history, no matter the civilization, people need heroes. And she's our hero. We love her. I don't even care if I never find out the truth. I know enough. She was a young doctor, respected, tried, and paid the price. She gives me strength, and I know she does to other people. We don't have many heroes.
Two years after the rebellion, she was baptized at Mission San Gabriel. Toypurina is sent to Monterrey, where she ultimately marries a Spanish soldier and has kids and seems to have blended into the colonial population. Thomas Temple sees this as a great triumph of Catholicism over native belief and of sort of the ultimate triumph of the missionaries over native populations. We don't really know if that's the case. What most likely occurred is that she somehow tried to survive. She lived a life between the native world and the Spanish world, and she, like her husband, were essentially transitional figures who were mestizos negotiating a very complicated world.
So when the Spanish arrived in Southern California, they brought with them over 250 years of sort of practice at implementing colonial designs. And one of the things that they brought with them was a very complex system of racial and ethnic categories. They were looking at what are the different combinations of races and ethnicities in our society, from indigenous to pure-blooded Spanish to people of African descent who had been brought as slaves to the New World, and then all of the mixtures that came from that. that's unusual for an American audience to try to wrap their heads around, is that actually the system of racial categorization was flexible, particularly if you had economic or political power.
Spain is such a tiny nation compared to this vast continent. How did they gain control over such vast amounts of land without having the population to do so? The way they did is they turned everybody else into Spanish.
So there was space in this new town of Los Angeles for those who'd been born at a lower racial or ethnic caste, mulatto, to actually apply to the Spanish government and provide evidence of political and economic success and request that they be recategorized as Espanol.
In 1790, Spain did a census, and they did it from all the way in South America down up to California. And they listed Jose Maria Pico, his caste, as Espanol.
So Jose Maria Pico, who was the father of Pio Pico, did change caste. Pio Pico had African blood. His father was originally classified as mulatto, but because of his key role in uncovering this plot, the next census reveals that his racial category had been changed to Spanish.
Pio Pico was born in 1801 in Mission San Gabriel. He dictates his memoir to a historian, and he says he was born in a shack made out of branches. It was fascinating that Pio Pico was able to, in 10 years, go from being completely broke to being one of the most powerful politicians. He was typical of the people who came to California and who were born here.
And historians argue that much of Californio identity was based on separating yourself from native peoples. And that came in many forms. It came in the form of dress, it came in the form of even recreation and leisure.
The Californios saw themselves as being very distinct from the people from Mexico City. They called the people from outside of California Mexicanos de la otra banda, so people from a different branch of the Mexican nation. And they called themselves los hijos del país.
Union Bank is proud to support Lost LA.
Additional funding for Lost LA made possible in part by the Ralph M. Parsons Foundation, California State Library, Anne Ray Foundation, and California Humanities.